It's hard to explain. By all standards, there shouldn't be a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation unless there was some divine intervention. It was just meant to happen. Deep down in my heart, I just couldn't quit. In my heart, I knew it was the right thing to do. We started something that is, well, in history is making a difference.
Welcome to the Elk Country Visitor Center, also known as the headquarters of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. But it didn't always look so grandiose. In fact, in 1984, when the organization began, it was a trailer in Troy, Montana. It was also in that town where 4 men came together with the idea to create an organization for such a majestic animal. 30 years ago, well, here we are. This is that 30-year story as told by founders of the RMEF. Born in a small northwestern Montana town known as Libby, Charlie Decker's life seemed destined to be a simple one from the beginning.
My dad logged and my granddad, and I've always been a logger. Was raising a family, just like any everyday working guy. Go to work every day and had 3 boys and did what any normal young family with 3 kids do.
Chicago boy. Got out of there as soon as I could. Jumped on the Milwaukee Road train, it let me off in Missoula, Montana, and I never looked back.
2 men with opposite lives who would meet in a small church in Troy, Montana.
Dan Bull and my brother and Charlie and I were just sort of tied together, good friends. Dan, he came back one day with a FNAWS magazine, which is a Foundation for North American Wild Sheep.
And he just picked it up somewhere, and he got to thinking about it. And
he said, "Elk do not have a champion, what do you think?"
We're going to roll the dice, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Well, if we're going to start, we've got to put some dollars into this. And Dan had great vision, big ideas, but unfortunately, as we found out later, not a whole lot of follow-through.
I think he was gone in 90 days.
So in 1984, the RMEF was founded, but nobody knew or cared. And now down to just 3 participants, they were about to find out exactly how difficult it would be to make this organization relevant.
We had no money.
No one was willing to lend us any money. So fortunately, my brother and I had a mother that said, "My 2 boys never do anything wrong." And as misguided as she was, she lent my brother Bill $8,000, lent me $8,000.
I took my oldest son's college money that Mom and I had saved for years, which is a whole story in itself.
About the time that the Elk Foundation started was a really bad economic time. I was totally opposed. It wasn't the idea I was against at all. I still knew it was a great idea. I was just not sure that we needed to be involved and it would be our last $8,000 in the bank.
Partner cost me a divorce. We've been married 53 years this year, but it wasn't a very happy time for Mother and me.
I knew that the idea was really great, and somehow we were going to be able to get our kids through college regardless. He says that I threatened divorce, and that's possible that I did, but it didn't work, so.
You know, I look back and I try and analyze those things. We were bound together by this faith. I believe God just brought it into existence, and we happened to be the tools at the time. It was amazing what happened from there.
With a dream born in 1984, the remaining founders of the RMEF had scraped together $24,000 to recruit members. The plan? Reach out to like-minded people through mailers, 43,000 of them. A good plan that failed miserably.
Out of 43,000 brochures and mailers, we had 233 members that we were broke.
We seriously talked about quitting. I would have fought and lost everything I had before I would quit. To tell somebody that I took their money and I couldn't give it back, I'd spend it. I just couldn't do that. That's just me.
We owe a commitment to 233 people that said, hey, we're expecting what you promised us in that brochure. Where do we go from here?
Where they went was developing a magazine, which today prints 1.5 million copies each year.
And that in and of itself is flat out miraculous.
In a practical sense, the Bugle magazine was a huge drain. We had to have a $25,000 letter of credit into Hart Press before they'd print the magazine, and we had to borrow it every time.
It's actually signing our homes on the line, and when you get all of your skin in the game, you better move forward and make it happen.
You know, early on I did crazy things, like I free drew that weird looking elk. Not very accurate, but you know, if you were willing, you were on.
If you look at it today, it looks terrible, that first Bugle, but
Didn't have to be good.
And those new magazines, well, they didn't exactly know how to sell them.
I mean, we were just driving around and putting them on people's gas station. Let us put them on the counter and tell them to send the money when they sold them, you know.
Selling bugles out of the back of a pickup wouldn't get the RMEF where it needed to be. They would have to find a wholesaler to buy them in bulk. And once again, the RMEF would get the break it needed to continue.
When this guy comes on the phone, he says, is this Bugle magazine? How fast can you get me 2,000 copies? And I'll tell you what, we got off the phone and high-fived for about 5 minutes, and we actually moved about 20-some thousand copies through the wholesale network.
Now just barely on their feet, the RMEF had another huge task in front of them.
We also in the magazine said, hey, we're going to have a convention. So that was the next order of business.
None of us had ever done anything like this.
We were so naive, but we pulled it off. Got enough money just to pay the hotels and all of the bills that we had from it. And went home and said, wow, that was an experience.
You could say that today Elk Camp is slightly larger. In time, a headquarters was built, but the early struggles would continue.
So we spent really the first 3 years in a position where we tried to stay alive, and that was as simple as it was.
The first 2 years were really, really lean, and it was a lot of work. And you can stand on the corner and holler all you want, but somehow you gotta get the message out there. It was just the right people at the right place all the way through this organization.
People like Wallace Pate and Aaron Jones, whose donations kept the doors open.
We flat out felt still that God had his hand in this organization. Why? Elk were endangered. We were seeing development take place everywhere. You know, elk were really being threatened because it was a habitat issue.
It was fun to see things grow, but it was also scary because there was still a lot of work to do. So there were some scary times.
This thing works for ducks, and if this thing works for sheep and all these other animals, why not something for elk?
Why not elk? It was time for this small town homegrown organization to take its next step. By 1987, the RMEF was in a position to move out of survival mode and put some money on the ground.
But Jack Ward Thomas made a very profound statement when he said, if you focus on habitat, you won't never get in trouble, because you can't argue about habitat.
So with a mission statement of working for elk and other wildlife, the RMEF went to work for habitat.
Done some small projects, but the first big project we did was Robb Creek in Montana. 17,000 acres was for sale from a grazing association, the Robb Creek Grazing Association.
If we don't buy that, it's going to be developed because it's beautiful country, but it's going to cost $2 million. Well, we still didn't have 2 cents to rub together.
It come down to the 11th hour.
Loans and private donations still left RMEF short of funds to complete the transaction. Then, with only hours to spare before the deal would fall through, Anheuser-Busch donated $500,000 to complete the deal. This marked the first step in the RMEF being able to establish itself as one of the most effective conservation organizations in the country.
And at the time, there were only 500 elk there. Today, there's almost 6,000.
Sent the message that, you know, we're for real, kind of a thing, you know what I'm saying? Other people started paying attention and we were alive and well and doing things.
It's kind of like when you're on a long distance road trip and you keep seeing a new horizon and it changes, and if you're going west, eventually you get to the western front of the Rocky Mountains and you see lots of obstacles, but you also see a beautiful picture. There were a lot of dips and turns, and it was very scary, but then we started seeing a bigger picture of things that were happening.
After 30 years, one thing that has not changed is the mission of the RMEF. It's to ensure the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. Today, RMEF accomplishes that mission through land protection, habitat stewardship, elk restoration, and hunting heritage programs. Over 203,000 members and 11,000 volunteers. 8,975 projects completed with over 6.4 million acres impacted. And the value of those projects is nearing $1 billion.
I think the best day with the whole foundation for me was 1997.
Being held as an historic day in the mountains of eastern Kentucky.
Nearly 4,000 people turned out to watch as state fish and wildlife officials released 7 elk into the woods, hoping to replenish a herd that's been lost for more than a decade.
To see 7 elk reintroduced into Kentucky, I mean, it was a day that still sends goosebumps throughout my body, because you could have heard a pin drop with that many people. And I'll tell you what, I know that there were 52 school buses full of school children that'll remember that for the rest of their lives.
That's a warm, fuzzy thing where elk haven't been for 150 years, to see how they're flourishing.
It's about people that love and cherish the land, the critter, and they care about each other, and they're making sure that their grandkids and kids will experience the same things they do.
Back at the birthplace of the RMEF, Charlie, Bob, and their wives are giving a tour and telling the story of how things started 30 years ago. These founders are still working hard for the cause.
This is the spot that I'll remember probably as the start of it. There's nothing here now, but it was a hub of activity, but not much revenue at that time.
And we saw so many 11th hour miracles, it was amazing. So I am sincere when I say we started this organization on our knees.
It's made up of the greatest people on this earth.
Amen. No doubt about it.
It would be impossible to put a value on Charlie's time and work. But still to this day, Charlie has not taken one penny from the RMEF and remains its longest reigning volunteer.
You still live in the same house?
Yes, sir.
You're There's probably some ripe ones already tonight, huh?
There ain't many.
They ripen pretty fast this time of year.
Yeah, I don't miss very many. I live in the same house and we live very frugally. Well, we just had the founders tour and we had a great tour. We had some people in. I feel very passionate towards this organization, and I do what I can financially for it too, which isn't a lot, but I do what I can. No, I'm still a poor logger.
Being a logger and a conservationist, those aren't two things that go together. In fact, I would say that the majority of people in America see you as a destroyer of the things that you love the most.
I think God put everything on this earth to be taken care of. Trees are a renewable resource, and I think the people that use the ground, the farmers and everybody else, we were intended to use it, but take care of it. Conservation is a wise use of our natural resources. I think of myself as a conservationist, and I'm a logger, and very proud of it.
As I look back today, I see a culture in the Elk Foundation that I think has always been fostered by Bob and Charlie. And I don't think we even knew we were doing that at the time. It was just a sense of the members are what drives this organization, the integrity. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. And always being upfront and transparent with people.
We have done what we said we're going to do. We've been transparent and honest.
Again, making commitments in this organization, saying we're going to do something and following through. We do it or die trying.
Our forefathers founded this country on some principles that we're really getting away from, and that's God, family, and country. And the people that belong to this organization, that is the common thread has made this organization, is keeping those things, three things in perspective.
The wonderful, dedicated, hardworking people that this attracted, that's what made it a success. It had nothing to do with us or what we did. It was in spite of it, probably.
You know, I think everybody should give back a little bit. We started something that will go down in history as making a difference in the landscape, done something positive. I think it'll go down when I'm long gone and as one of the great conservation organizations this country's ever had. And you talk about something that told me there's something more to this deal than just a guy wandering around on Earth. Tell me what you could do that would be more thrilling than have a bull elk from me to you screaming at you. Doesn't that make your heart pick up a notch?